So I believe we are recording. And we'll go ahead and get started. Appreciate everybody for joining. Let's see, I want to make sure, I see a few names up here that I haven't heard yet. So Dave Scheidler, are you on?
Yes.
All right, and how about Valerie? Did you get to join us?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, good. And Chance, are you on? I think everybody else has chimed in. So we'll go ahead and get started. I think most of you have done at least one peer review where you have served as a reviewer, so appreciate you joining us. Some of you have actually been in there on the ground where you've sent a plan in for review. I think everybody's kind of at a point where you've got some either in the mix or just about in the mix, so this is a great time for us to spend this time together. Let me just double check because I am using this system as a host for the first time. So is everybody seeing the screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm assuming you're hearing me okay since you have responded to questions. So I will move ahead. If there's a problem, there is a way. If you go to the very top of the screen, you get a pull down there. And so the chat feature's there, and you can raise your hand if you have a question. But we'll go through this fairly quickly. I've only got a few slides, but then at any point if you've got a question, we'll answer, and then certainly we'll stop at the end to make sure that you have a chance to answer your questions. Dave, is there anything you want to say before we get going?
Yeah, let me just take like 1 to 2 minutes and say that the high-quality plan review process is a really important piece of the entire puzzle. When we were doing SET in the beginning, phases 1 and 2, we did not ask that states submit a plan for any sort of a review at the national level. And it's not as though we want to be grading people. That's not the deal at all. What we want to do is make sure that the time and energy that's being spent on SET produces results. That's really it. So, the coaches are spending a lot of time and energy, and even more so, the regional team members are spending a lot of time and energy together. And we don't want 5 years later to go back to the region and say, so what happened with SET? And people are scratching their heads and they have no idea. So we want, not that producing a high quality plan guarantees that there are going to be results, but if you don't have the high quality plan, you can almost guarantee that you're not going to have results. So that's basically the underlying philosophy behind all this, and appreciate all of you in contributing in various ways to this process. And thanks for sitting in on this webinar. And with that, Rachel, I'll turn it back to you.
All right. And get this thing to move. There we go. I think most of you probably somewhere along the way have seen this purpose statement for SET that was written way back in the beginning when we were first beginning to think about what we really wanted. But the important words here are highlighted. It's partly about developing a plan, but implementing is the intent all the way through. So as Dave has already said, the purpose of this review is to help those regions be successful in moving that plan into implementation. So it's partly about looking at the comparison of these 15 elements that we're going to go through in detail, but it's also about giving that feedback. So those of you, again, that have already participated in that process have seen how we go through and talk with the reviewers, get their feedback, and send that to the regions. And then we are continually encouraging those regions to come back and work on that plan, bring those elements up to speed. If there was something that was lacking, we'll be glad to work with you on that and then resubmit. There's no limit to how many times a region can resubmit, so we certainly encourage them to continue to work and move forward. So with that in mind, just a quick review in case there's anyone that does not have this on their memory just yet. We do have a 3-person review panel. At least 2 of them have been or are set coaches. Sometimes we bring in a third, what we call an outside reviewer, someone that hasn't been directly involved as a coach, but that is very knowledgeable with rural development and regionalism, and so sometimes we have used those outside coaches to help provide that third perspective. We attempt to do 1 extension person and 1 rural development person, at least in the team, and so that usually is the case. Occasionally we don't know to do that. We are looking on all 15 attributes that the plan is considered acceptable, and we're going to look at the rating system here in just a second so you see where that is. So keep that in mind as we go through. So here's the scoring rubric, and this was changed a few months ago just with some feedback that we got from the different reviewers. So if this looks different from last time you did a review, that might be because you haven't done one in a while. A 4 is considered exceeding expectations. Now with this new point value, a 3 is considered acceptable. And some of the feedback we got from reviewers in the past is that we did have the need some work as a single category, but we heard from them that they really would like us to give a little more breadth in that. Whether it needs a little bit of work to bring it up would be a 2. If it needs a lot of work, it's a 1. And that distinction seems very important as reviewers began to try to code and review these different plans. A 0 is obviously that the region just completely seems to have missed including that element. Don't get many 0s. We've only had a smattering of them, but that does happen on occasion. So then we'll look at these areas. There are a total of 15 elements that we're considering, but they fall into these 5 broad categories. So they are evidence-based, practical, broadly supported, focused on regional economic development, and then aligned with mission. Go through these different pieces, then you'll see how those fall together within these broader topics. So we'll start with the evidence-based, and it has 2 elements within it. The first one looks at the assets and challenges, and with that one, what we're looking for is that as the region is putting together their plan, they show that they have it based on a strong understanding of the region's current and emerging assets and challenges, as well as the demographic and economic features of the region. So they're looking at all of the demographic information that we've provided and other things that they may know, and they're thinking about those, both the assets that they have as well as the challenges based on that information. And you can see that they've built a plan based on it. And then comparative advantage is looking a little bit more into the specifics of the economics in that region. This is one area that will have a little bit different wording in the future, but the way it's been looked at in the past has been that it's looking at the major strengths or major strategies are built on the region's comparative economic advantage, especially looking at the current or emerging economic clusters. We are seeing, as I said, as we move to the future, that there are some regions that, for various reasons, the economic clusters might not be their strongest single comparative advantage, and there may be some broader ways to look at that. So look for some changes as we go into, particularly into step 5, as we start looking at that, look at the differences. Practical is the next major heading, and there are several, as you can see, several different pieces to that one. This is probably the one that's got the most single components under it, and some of them are very similar, but they all have a little bit of a different nuance on them. So the first one focused is about the number of goals that a region has. So essentially it's looking at the collective set of goals appear to be well suited to the regional team capacities. In other words, if you've got a small region and only a few people that are working together, you would certainly not want to see 20, 30 goals, because that's not likely to be realistic. On the other hand, if you've got a very big, robust region with lots of people and lots of partners, then perhaps they could handle a few more goals. The rule of thumb that seems to be kind of falling together on these plans and where we're seeing capacity is that a maximum of 5 major goals to get started seems to be good. And again, if it's a smaller region, 5 may even be too many. It may be some regions 1 is enough if it's really well positioned in the things that we talked about in the first section. The second part of this is logical, and that is that those major strategies taken together seem to be designed to achieve clearly stated regional goals. So it all was logical. We've got this goal, and there's these 4 or 5 or however many strategies, but if you think about the strategies, you can see logically how that's going to get to the goal. So that's looking at the connection between the pieces. Targets is specifically looking at those measurable places along the road that will help the group gauge movement towards their goal, which is mostly in, depending on which version you are, it's the very last module, so module 8 for some, for set 4, it's module 9 for the other regions. So it is very important that the reviewers see that there are some specific measurable targets. We're seeing some really interesting goals and some interesting ideas, sometimes that lack the ability to measure. So be sure that the group is thinking very intentionally about how they can measure their movement towards success. The next one, time periods. We are looking to see that the region is thinking not just in the far, far distant future and not just in the next few days, but rather there are several different pieces to this. For instance, there are short-term pieces in there. They're typically less than a year. There's some medium term that maybe are going to take 2 to 4 years. But then there's also some long-term goals, some big picture headed down the road kind of goals that all build together as this group thinks forward. And closely related to that, once those goals are in place, we are looking for some initial tasks. And that is that the group has the next 6 to 12 months really lined out well on how they're going to make progress towards the goals that they've selected. So these are what you might consider sort of the plan of work, or the baby steps that are going to get them down to the plan. There is in Module 7 or 8, depending on which version you are again, you've got that plan of work in there. If that plan of action is completed and you can see that those steps are lined out, that's a good piece to include in your plan as an appendix, or you can include it directly in the narrative, because that answers this one piece. And also, if you have filled out all the columns on that piece, you're answering the last one, which is responsibility. What we're looking for specifically on responsibility is that you've got someone, or possibly an organization, that's raised their hand and said, we will do this step, or I will do this step. And ideally, we're looking to see that there's broad participation on that, which will go to our next section. We have seen 1 or 2 plans where it looked like it became a single person's plan of work when we got done, where we'll make up a name. George is the person named as the one responsible for every single step. On the other side, we've seen occasionally where it has the responsibility column on that page, you just have the whole big entity named, the XYZ region, and that's all that's in there. So there needs to be a balance in the sharing of the load, but that the responsibility is clear on who's going to be taking which steps. So moving then to the broadly supported, again, these are closely tied to what we've already discussed a little bit, and that is, first of all, that as the plan is being developed, you see that there is broad participation. This is a bit of a challenge to document, and so I'll tell you a little of what we've seen. Sometimes we have people's names, but as you read through the document, there's no real understanding of how people came together. So a little bit of narrative helping the reader see, oh, okay, we did have a lot of people there at the table helping, and here's kind of how that worked, and here's how we see them connected. It doesn't take a lot of work to tell that story, but telling that story is more powerful than just putting a list. The list is helpful, but a little bit of narrative is also helpful. The reviewers are not just assuming because there's a list of people somewhere in an appendix that they really were actively participating. And then there's public input. We are looking for some way that the general public or a larger group of people have had the opportunity to weigh in on what's being done. Is the case in most regions. There's a smaller group of people that really are coming to all the set trainings and walking through this process, yet in many cases they are reaching out in some other way. And so being sure to document how that's happening, whether that's done in some somewhat informal networks where people are going back and visiting with different key players in their counties or in their communities and then coming back together, or whether it's done in more formal settings such as roundtables, focus groups, those kind of things. Moving to the next one, buy-in is looking to see that the plan has buy-in from key decision makers in the region. There are a number of ways that this can be demonstrated. Obviously, if they have been at the table in the middle of the planning process from day one, that's one way to show that they have buy-in, that they're right there. But we know that often, particularly elected officials, may not be the ones at the table. They may instead be sending someone or just getting some kind of feedback. But there needs to be some way that this regional plan explains that buy-in. So whether you have a decision maker that can do a letter that shows that they really do understand the plan and that they have given buy-in, or you can show how they have been looped into the process just through a narrative. There are a number of other ways you can do that, but we're really looking to see that the people that control the decision-making and the resources for the region have had some kind of a buy-in to this process. Otherwise, you can imagine that its chances of success will be slim. And the final piece, persuasive, is a little bit about just how the document is written. Is it written in a way that people can follow it, that they can understand it? If someone picks it up cold, can they follow it? I know one of the things, and this may sound like a small thing, but one of the things that's been challenging sometimes as reviewers read through plans is just the broad use of acronyms that aren't explained. So your internal lingo, you may know exactly what you're talking about, but an external person reading this may get lost in all the letters and numbers and completely miss some of the great things that you're doing. So that's a tiny little piece, but again, this doesn't have to be super technical. It doesn't have to be super polished. That's not the point, but it should be something that might interest a reader and help them understand what you're doing, and again, then help them be interested in supporting your work. This next section is a two-pronged fork, as you can see, but it's that the plan is focused on two big pieces. One, it is focused on the economics of the region, so there's something there that is intended specifically to build the economic resources in that region, but also that it is regional in focus. In other words, the flip side of that is we don't want to see big compilation of the 4 counties' individual wish list. County A wants to do this, 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 and this, and County B wants to do this, this, and this, and there's no rhyme or reason or connection that draws them together as a region. So there may be some instances where something that goes to a specific county or community might help the region as a whole. If that's the case, though, it really should be discussed as why that is important. Why is it important to do this one thing in this one region or this one county, and how is that going to help the region if that's the case? Otherwise, the goals should be very clearly designed to build the region together. Lastly, we have kind of the overarching piece that just says all of the pieces that are there are consistent, connected. It's how the goals, the strategies, the action steps, the measurements, the people involved are logically tied together. They're very consistent and connected. And you don't have these odd outlying pieces that you just don't quite see how they fit or why that selection was made. I'm going to stop there for a moment and go into the last couple of slides and see if you have any questions about any of these specific pieces.
So, this is Dave. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep, Dave Sears from National Office. About 2 slides ago, when you were talking about persuasive buy-in, etc., one way to think about that is if you have a interested citizen in the region who did not participate as a member of the SET team, what is that person going to think about the document? So, like Rachel said, the acronyms, that's a turnoff. Things not clearly presented, a turnoff. Not persuasive, that is, the person picks up the document. By the time the person has read the document, you want the person to be persuaded. Wow, this is really cool. These are great ideas. I would love to be a part of it. It's a document that would really resonate well with a interested citizen who did not participate in the process.
Other thoughts, comments? I'm going to share some resources with you that are available. Hopefully by now all of you are aware of these, but just in case, I will make sure that you know about them. If you go to the SET website that's on SRDC site, there is now this section of the high-quality plan. If you click on that, there are a number of resources over there now. We have 2 plans that we feel like have risen to the top in the high-quality plan review that are SET plans. So they're posted over there now. And although they're very, very good, they're not 100% perfect. So if you pull either of them up, there's one for Nevada and one for Virginia, you'll see that there are some of the virtual sticky notes. Some of those show where the plan really excelled and where the reviewers thought something was done exceptionally well. And then there are a few places where we just noted that, well, this was good and it's acceptable, could be stronger yet. So there's a few of those notes in there too. But 2 really good plans. They may be very helpful to you as you're trying to help your region to prepare a plan. The review tool itself is over there. There's also a 2-page, it's a front-back handout that talks about producing a high-quality regional economic development plan. So it's got these 15 traits that we've just been talking about there in a 2-pager that you can just print front and back and share with your region. There are all kinds of other helps over there, all kinds of other tools. We're continuing to to add and change and work on that as we find some really new opportunities. So I would encourage you as a coach particularly to go over there and spend some time looking around at some of the tools there, particularly if you get your plan and you've got questions that either it's getting ready to be sent and you want to kind of double check over something, or if you've gotten it back and there's something where your region's plan was not scored as highly as you would have liked, there may be some help and some ideas there that can help you. But I would really encourage you to look at that. So I want to tell you about the intended process and timeline, and I'm going to say up front that this has taken more time than we thought, but part of that is because we are trying to use peer review. So we're trying to use you and your colleagues to do review of other plans so that we have that little bit of insider knowledge but still one step back. The challenge with that is, as you all know, as many of you have been reviewers, is sometimes that 2-week time period to do a review hasn't been feasible. So always when I send a note out and ask for a team of reviewers, what we generally do is put in our list of people and see who hasn't done one in a while. We try not to burden people too much, but I think everybody's done at least one now. Pull our team in, send them a note and say, we'd like to have this reviewed by, and we give a timeline, and I ask for people to respond back of, yes, I can do it, or, occasionally if it's just hit you at a major crunch and you can't get it done in that 2-week time period, please tell me that, because I would rather save you for a time that's not as critical and choose someone else. Sometimes we've had plans that have gotten hung up by someone that, I'm sure I can get it done, and then we end up waiting. And so I know that you want your answers quickly, and we try to move very quickly. It has taken us longer, though, than we initially envisioned in being able to move through the process. But essentially, when I get your plan, I send it out to a team of 3 people. We ask them to get scores back within 2 weeks. We put those together, and then we do a conference call among those 3 reviewers just to let them look at their scores, see where, particularly if there's one of the elements or more where the scores had a wide range, we try to spend some time there to see what the different people saw and then come to consensus on where the scores should be. Then from that, I put together a summary that's just a 2-page. It averages their scores and kind of summarizes their comments and send that back to this review team so that they have a chance to say, yes, you captured everything that's important, or no, you missed a point, let's make sure we captured that. And that goes to the region. So in the best world, that takes about 3 weeks. In reality, some of them have taken a couple of months, and we apologize for that delay. Any ideas that any of you have for speeding that process up, would certainly welcome that. But we do feel like it's important to have that time for the reviewers to look, read, and then to look back over the summary. So I'm going to stop there and see what questions you have or suggestions you have about the high-quality elements, about the review process itself, any of the sample plans or elements, or just anything else that's kind of on your mind as many of you, again, are moving towards this process of having plans to submit.
Rachel?
Yep.
This is Carol Welty in Nebraska. One of the things that my colleague Tim Lemon suggested that we do is actually have our set group have to defend the plan. So we're thinking about putting or bringing in, after it's all written, bringing in a panel of people from across the state that the group would actually have to make a presentation to and defend the plan, just like it were a thesis or a dissertation or something like that.
That's an interesting idea. There may be a couple of groups that have used their state planning team in that role, so that might be something to consider. But it's different when you know your insider information, but then they have to turn around and present it to someone that hasn't been there. It does take a different level, so that's a good idea.
This is Dave Sears. I think that's a wonderful idea, and please send us some sort of analysis, some sort of report on what worked about it, what didn't work about it. I think that's a terrific idea, and I commend you for giving it a try.
As I said, it was Tim's idea, so I'm sure we're gonna try that. We will send you a report. In fact, probably each one of the panelists, I would say we'd have maybe 5 if we can get them. They would all have notes and comments, so we could send you copies of those.
Excellent.
You've got the peer review tool at your disposal. You could even share that with them and let them do a trial run at scoring it.
Oh yeah, that'd be a great idea too. Yeah, we will.
And I think I've heard one other group that took that scoring instrument and gave it to the regional team and had them kind of self-score their plan before they submitted it. And I thought that was an interesting approach.
This is Christine from South Dakota, and what we've done is actually had that scoring tool. We just went through a session last week while we're putting together the plan. They've had that so they can kind of see the sequence and importance of even when they're writing it. Has there ever been thought that there's, to take that idea a step further, that someone from the region has a call with the peer review team to actually talk about the plan at the time that they're going through it? While it should be all in writing, maybe there is that verbal feedback that can happen.
We've had 2 groups that have done a call with Dave and or me after the fact. We have not had a call yet where they did that with the review team, and I guess I would like to get y'all's feedback, because you would be the reviewers, whether or not that may make for an uncomfortable situation for those reviewers that are given the marks, or if it would be better for that conversation to happen with Dave and myself. Because we're on those calls, so we're listening to feedback, and we are taking much more extensive notes than what gets put back to you in a summary, just because it is a rather extensive process. But I don't know, what are the others of you think of that?
Rachel, this is Dave. Just a quick clarification. When after Rachel prepares that 2-page summary, it goes to the review team for edits and ultimately approval. Then Rachel sends that on to the state coaching team. The cover letter to the state coaching team says, if you want to have a phone call about this, we will be happy to do that. Is that accurate, Rachel?
Yes. And let's say we've had a couple of regions that have taken advantage of that opportunity. I know there's 1 or 2 that I've done with the region itself, and I've had a couple of others where just the coaches got in touch with me and asked for some guidance and suggestions. I don't know if Bo's had some of that feedback too. I see you're on the call, Bo. You've been quiet.
Yeah, I've been quiet.
Very open to any opportunity we can give the region to be successful in this review.
Rachel, this is Dave Stradler. Getting back to your original question, I think logistically it would be easier just to have that one point person on the call, as opposed to trying to facilitate multiple reviewers with potentially multiple people from the region. To me, that might be an awkward kind of conversation. too many opinions, I guess, potentially being expressed by the reviewers.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of a little bit of my concern too. Plus, there are times if a plan really does have weaknesses that I want to make sure that the reviewers are very comfortable voicing clearly where their concerns are. And I guess I'm a little worried that they might feel more reluctant to say where they saw weaknesses if there's people on that call. And I'd rather them feel comfortable saying what they really think so that we can give that feedback. But again, I'm very interested in how you feel about it as a group because, as I said, you would be the ones on that call. Other thoughts?
Hey, Rachel, this is Bo. I was wondering if those are people, I know several people on the call have already reviewed some of these submissions. I'm wondering whether it might be worthwhile to ask those who want to, maybe what are 2 or 3 of the things that you found were the biggest problems with the submissions, with the plans?
Are you asking that call back to me or to some of those who have been reviewers?
Anybody who's on the call. Has Christine, have you not done a review of the high-quality plan?
Yes, I have. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so anybody who's done, Rachel, anybody who's done it, what do you think have been the 2 or 3 problems that you've seen with these proposals, just in hopes that we can coach some of these original teams in terms of what to look for?
Well, because you asked, I believe that the readability, if anything, I mean, you have, if there is a time constraint, but when you're looking at the plans, having to dig for the information or try to get an essence, like Rachel uses an example of community engagement, or if you try to get an essence from it, but it's really not clearly stated and having to dig for the information, it was kind of hard on a couple of the plans that I've looked at. And I think that even when the use of acronyms kind of shows, you've got to understand that people that aren't from your state are going to be looking at it. So I remember one plan that didn't even have, we kind of had to guess almost what state it was from. It wasn't apparent in the first couple paragraphs. So it's just making sure that it's very reader-friendly and generic.
We did this just a few weeks ago. We brought over all the scores from all the plans that have been reviewed, and just quickly looking, and we did an average across all 15 pieces just to see if there were some specific areas where we needed to consider addressing these better in the curriculum. That was our purpose. But let me just tell you where the 3 or 4 lowest marks fall on average. One of those is targets. So again, that's going back to the measurement. We've got clear measurement on, here's the goal out here, here's how we're going to measure our success along the way. And that should have more than one layer. There should be some short-term measures and also some longer-term measures. So that's one of the areas. Responsibility was one of the lower areas. And again, that goes back to who put their name on the dotted line on that plan of action, so that you see people are they're stepping up. It's not just a plan that's going to sit on a shelf, but you have people's names, they commit, and they're going to get these steps accomplished. Persuasive was the 3rd lowest on average, and there again, I think Christine just did a great job of explaining some of the pieces that go to that. So those are the 3 lowest areas just at a glance. The areas that people are doing well is, the focused is that area are kind of narrowing the number of goals and matching that to the size and ability of the region. We also see that regional development focus is strong, where they are doing, for the most part, most of the groups are doing things that clearly do identify the region as the target, and you can see how that's going to fit together. So those are a couple of areas. Economic development focus is typically fairly strong also. So that's giving you the kind of the highs and lows on average of the plans. So other questions, comments? Well, if not, I do appreciate you taking time with this. We are happy to answer questions anytime we can. We want to see success. We want to see the plans move forward. We also, though, are committed to the quality and appreciate those of you who have served as reviewers, and particularly those over the summer that we tapped for longer conversations about the review tool itself and how we might refine it and get it into a more usable form. So appreciate all of that feedback from all of you. We are continually hoping to improve this process. So any suggestions you have at any time are always very welcome. Dave or Bo, either one, anything else that you would like to add before you sign off?
Again, thank you very much for participating, and hats off to Nebraska for trying that special process for reviewing the plan. I think that sounds cool, and we'll be interested in hearing how that works. Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you. And just I underline what Rachel said. This process is a process that's in process, if you will, and so we are always open for ideas and suggestions for how we can make it work better. Thanks a lot.
Nothing from me other than say thank you again. We have 15 people on, including me, obviously, but thank you, Rachel, for putting this together. And of course, anybody on the call, feel free to contact us at any time.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.